here we are, we're back again. You know, him that spoke last communion, so it's been almost a month since I've been up here. So we're gonna get back right into the uncomfortable truths and the uncomfortable truisms. Okay? I'm in my 50s now, so I'm finding that I don't be caring how people be thinking and feeling about certain things that I said. It needs to be said. So I need to put this disclaimer out before this lesson because we had a controversial subject last time that we have to readdress this time. So let me say this much, that when I get up here, it's never my intention to offend anyone. I repeat, when I get up here, it's never my intention to offend anyone. However, I too purposely provoke. So I don't intend to defend or offend, but I'm here to perfectly or purposely provoke, shift, change, and transformation in every crevice of your soul. Let that sink in. Because we're living in a time now where we're finding out how polarized that we are as a community, right? It was, for a while, we all thought so many people in our community, the conscious community, was on one page, the same page. And then the world got knocked over, got turned upside down. Now you're finding out that the person to your right and left don't necessarily believe the same thing that you believe. And we thought we was on the same page. Especially with this virus that coming around, we thought we was on the same page. We thought we had similar ideas about the establishment.
Right.
So now what am I talking about? Last time I spoke about vaccine hesitancy, right? And I thought I was clear about there's a difference between vaccine hesitancy and anti-vax. We don't teach anti-vax, we teach that it is our right to be hesitant about this vaccine. Right?
True.
Now, something triggered me from the last communion, like when I got home, because before we was on the couch for the past year and a half, so we could watch the comments go across the screen as we're speaking. So when I got home to watch the comments, I realized that it was a doctor in the chat. And the doctor obviously was upset at the things that I was saying. It bothered him. He was off put. And I want to say big up to the black women representing the personification of the divine feminine. They was defending me big time in the chat. Some brothers too, but it was primarily the black women in the chat kind of getting on the doctor. They, the brothers was like, well, maybe if it bothers you so much, you should reach out to the brother and he could give you some further clarifications on some of the points. And the sisters was like, bounce. What are you here for? Why are you even here? Like, just go. Because he kept going. He was wanting to engage in the conversation. I'm watching the chats and I had to even wonder, like, is this a bot? Y'all heard about bot technology, right? So they got certain technology out here that's just monitoring people and engaging you and taking you down rabbit holes you don't need to go. So I was just looking at his responses. I'm just like, okay, he was provoking responses, I guess, directed at me, but since I'm up here teaching, I wasn't live in the chat, so it was the community trying to hold it down. Now, to be fair, I know the brother. I met him twice, so I can't say we're friends, but I know the brother, he's a good brother. However, he's a doctor. So we know when you see that MD at the back of people's name, at the front of people's name, that means that they are initiated into the system. Right? The very system that we had terrible experiences with. So we have to take that under consideration. He could be a good brother, but he's invested in that system, so he's loyal more or less to that system. You're never going to see someone go into the system and be a doctor or lawyer and just totally turn their back on it. They're invested in it. They may disagree with some things in it, but more so, their loyalties go to that system. They take pride in their association with that system. So a lot of times those brothers and sisters that do that, and this is just a constructive criticism, I'm not downing them, they find themselves struggling with their position that they play within our conscious and spiritual communities in their profession that they live as professionals. Because the doctor and the lawyer is considered some of the highest professional titles in this world, so we can't expect for them to turn their back on their education. So I understand him being upset or off-put by some of the things I was saying. But like I said, he's still part of that system. So that leads me to believe or know that long as that system that he represents is governed by Europeans, we could never, ever take the suspicion of racism off the table. So we could be as spiritual as we want. We go, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. Like, you still black at the end of the day. And that still factors in on how the world sees you as well as treats you. So spiritual or not, we can never take that suspicion of racism fully off the table. So this current president, we find him unresponsive to the needs of melanated black African people. Would y'all agree? So, remember, he went on his whole campaign and was strategically sitting down with black folks like he's concerned. We brought our concerns, what we needed him to deal with. And here he is in office, unresponsive to the things that we have to say. What was his response? He did respond. He responded by putting out an anti-Asian hate crime bill. So here we are telling him to deal with this police brutality, and he put the police on notice about surveilling us even some more, because somehow in this last year, black folks became a threat to Asian people. I ain't never known a black person that hate an Asian person. We be eating at their restaurants. We buy our shea butter and all the type of stuff. We buy more black African products from Chinese than ourselves. I know I'm sounding like a perverse race. I have a Chinese friend, you know. I eat Chinese food. I support, no, but it goes deeper than that. Back in the 70s, black folks was wanting to be Bruce Lee. Back in the, so still, Cass was even wearing Chinese outfits walking down the street. And if we could get that bowl cut that Bruce Lee had, we would do that. So I seen somebody do that with their afro. He had the whole Bruce Lee bowl cut, you know, and he did something with the afro. I don't know if he put a bowl on it to form it and stuff. But anyway, that's how enamored we were with them. So we never hated Asians. So instead of answering our concerns, what did he do? He said, guess what? I'm gonna let you guys get the first jab. Wow. You get first dibs at the jab. That's our response. We have vaccine hesitancy. Remember Tuskegee? And that medical racism. They also came up with the myth that black folks' skin is extra thick and leathery, so we don't feel pain like normal white folks. When in reality, they have pheomelanin, we have eumelanin, and our melanin is highly conductive, which means we feel more of everything than everybody on the planet. And here they got our black women in hospitals suffering, being tortured because they don't think you're serious about your pain. So we have vaccine hesitancy. We're not anti-vax because of our experience with medical racism. That has nothing to do with the science. It has everything to do with those in control of the jurisdiction of science. Am I being fair? True. Okay. So now this conversation we having right here gets religious folks in trouble, get organized religion in trouble. Did y'all know they created that thing called the 501c3 to stop us from having conversations like this? True. This got created with Lyndon B. Johnson, and as his response to Dr. Martin Luther King, because Dr. Martin Luther King had power, influence, and charisma over the masses of our people. Notice how they always need us to push forward their agenda. We have 77% of us of vaccine hesitancy. They need us getting on board to move forward with their thing. So they're seeing the power of religious folks, or organized religious or organized spiritual people, or organized black folks, period. They're seeing the power behind that. But that's neither here nor there. I want to address two comments to brothers. I'm not going to get on his case because, like I said, he's a good brother. What I'm trying to do is demonstrate as a black man how black men are supposed to handle conflict. We keep talking about how women are so emotional. Y'all see black men these days online? Yes. That's pseudo information. We got emotions, we deal with it, or we thought we dealt with it very differently. We got the women looking like, damn, I thought I was emotional. Brothers be losing. So I'm not gonna attack the brother or disparage him or attack his credentials. We got a right to disagree. That's why this is supposed to be a democracy, right? We're supposed to be able to dialogue both sides of the truth, not just my side because I got a title You know, I got a title too, so what? Remember, my title and my accomplishments means nothing in his field, and his title and his accomplishments means nothing in the spiritual community. So we have to be mature enough to have a dialogue, because if we are all sincere seekers of the truth, then we got a dialogue about it, right? Sure. So he said two things. He said, I'm not an expert, and I need to get an expert to talk about that vaccine. Just so y'all know, I'm a CNC, I'm a certified nutritional consultant, so I am qualified to speak and teach on health. Sir Wild Mentura is also a qualified health professional, qualified to speak on health. 9 out of 10 times I defer everyone to him, because that's his title and function in the temple. He has a whole sense of life, strength, and health, right? Sure. And most people don't know that we actually confer. We already actually have a protocol for pre-vaccination as well as after vaccination, for all of those who feel like it's unavoidable for them to get it. Because it ain't doomsday. Remember, we're hesitant. If you got to get it, you might just have to get it. All I'm saying in this conversation is I'm not judging you. We're not judging you because we wasn't anti-vax. We was hesitant. So now, you know, as human beings, we got to get creative to survive. So we figured out a protocol of what you could do before and after if you had to do it. Because I know everyone got concerns about what's going to happen if you get that thing in you, because remember, they haven't even released the ingredients of it. Is that fair? To mandate and demand and talk about, I'm losing patience if you don't put this experimental thing in your body. I know the doctor probably mad online. There he goes again. He needs to stop it. What's the ingredients? At least with junk food, we look at the ingredients and be like, I can't even pronounce some of this stuff. I'm eating it anyway. We made a conscious decision to participate in the poison, right? We all do that more or less. Why don't we get this same opportunity with this jab? Let us know. Transparency. Transparency is how you build trust, right? You don't just say, my word is law. So his claim number one, he said, I spoke about chlorophyll, right? I said chlorophyll builds the blood. We was talking about our concerns with the vaccine, with the effects of the vaccine. So us into the natural field, we deal with prevention. We don't deal with cure. And he said there's no scientific evidence to say that chlorophyll addresses the negative effects of the vaccine. That's not what I said. I was just talking about supporting health. If you were concerned about your cells in the uptake of oxygen, y'all remember that? Sure. So now here's a lesson in naturopathy. In naturopathy, we don't fight disease. In naturopathy, we don't fight disease, and we don't try to cure. What we do is strive for balance. That's so the medical profession fights disease. We strive for balance. We understand that bacteria, virus, and fungus is just as organic as anything else on the planet. Those things are organic as existence itself. Those are not our enemies. Bacteria comes from the word bacterium, from Latin. It means staff or cane, because they found out when they could see it under a microscope, it looks like a cane, so it's a stick or a staff. There are 100 trillion bacterial microorganisms in your body. 100 trillion. 2 to 6 pounds of your body weight is bacteria. You know, when you do your number 2, you defecate, that mass of that is actually bacteria. You thought that was undigested food. The mass of that is actually bacteria. It is now understood by so-called science that the human being is only 10% human being, 90% microbial. So now you see the damage of antibacterial soaps and stuff. You're literally killing yourself. Virus. Virus means venom. According to the Greek word, virus means venom. Approximately 8% of your DNA is virus. 8% of your DNA is actually ancient viruses. And the rest of the 40%, the scientists are still trying to figure out, that they say it might actually be part of a more ancient form of the virus or viruses. So this body that you got It has this symbiotic relationship with the earth and life because it has bacteria. This thing is actually your spacesuit. Aren't we in outer space? We be looking at the planets out there, outer space, and like we floating up there too. This is just spacesuit. It's an organic spacesuit. What happens sometimes we spend so much time feeding the body what the body needs and we forget what it's here for. We give the body its basics so it can sustain itself so you can fulfill your purpose. Remember, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, right? Sometimes we make too much of the body. So everything else on the planet, has bacteria. Babies go on the floor, they be touching things, putting things in their mouth. That is them trying to have this symbiotic relationship with the bacteria. We're like, oh, it's dirty. That's how you build your immunity. Mm-hmm. So now, when the body, the bacteria, the virus, and the fungus, and all of that stuff gets out of hand in the body, that's what's called disease. So we have as above, so below, so within, so without. So because we're off balance, nature is off balance. Because nature is off balance, we're off balance. The only problem we can have with this is if somebody's tampered. If someone said, oh, we're going to take this virus and mix it with this virus. Oh, that's very interesting. Now we get into the conspiracy things that we heard. So people are mixing viruses that was never meant to be mixed, mixing bacteria that was never meant to be mixed. And they have those things in them CDC laboratories. They got them on files. And one day somebody goes, oops. That's how the COVID got out. Remember they said, oh no, that's nonsense. It comes from a bat. Y'all remember that? Now just several months ago, they realized that it actually did come from a laboratory. So now you see what I'm talking about, transparency. So all the stuff that was called as conspiracy is now looking like there was some rhyme or reason to it. So even with this man-made vaccine, your bacteria, your viruses within you could decode it. It just needs time. But until then, there's collateral damage, which we experience with all these deaths. It's the body trying to figure it out. They should have never tampered in the first place, so they got themselves in a conundrum. And then we done created this, and we ain't even have no, we wasn't ready because it was by mistake, allegedly. So the divine intelligence within you can figure it out. So with our naivety, looking at what's happening with ourselves and what's happening with nature, we create complex mythologies about the wrath of God and how nature works. So some religions be like, God is mad at us, that's why we got COVID. Some people are like, God is mad at us, that's why we got this hurricane. These are natural phenomena. The more imbalanced, the more disrespect we treat our body, that's the harder your healing response is going to be. What we're calling sickness is just a healing response. You understand? There is no disease, it's just a healing response. So what we see in nature is a healing response to our violation against it. We got plastics and all types of stuff in the water, we're polluting the air, the electromagnetic field of the planet is deteriorating. So what else is supposed to happen? Hurricanes gotta happen. The earth, is a consciousness, it's an intelligence, it has the right to balance itself. When you're taking those colonics, do you feel any way for the bad bacteria coming out your behind? Like, those bacteria got families and everything. And that's how we be wanting the divine intelligence to be. We done messed up. We're serving as the bad bacteria of the planet, and you gotta do colonics, you gotta do cleanses. You don't gotta care about us. You gotta know we in hurricane season, right? In the islands, the hurricane season, we wrecking the islands. They be wrecking New Orleans. Did it ever come to your mind and you're like, yo, why are people still living out there? Same with New Orleans. Why are those people still living out there? The way it be ripping them up. They learn how to live in tune with nature. New Orleans has a culture, a serious culture. It's probably the most African place in the United States as far as culture. The people in the islands have a culture. So we look at them and they don't have the so-called sophistication of the buildings like how we do. So it creates this illusion that we're civilized and what's wrong with them? Why aren't they catching up? Because they know that hurricane gonna come through and wipe all that stuff out, so they learn to live humble. They be like, yo, There ain't no need to be building up them buildings because that might be a wrap next year. So they learn how to live humble. They learn how to live in tune. They don't see it as the wrath of God. They're like, oh, well, buckle down. And our ancestors did the same way. We talk about the Hapi Iteru, the Nile River, the Nile Valley civilization. Didn't they have a whole season of flooding? Over here, a flood is like, oh my God, the floods, the gods are mad. They'd be like, oh yeah, the flood is coming. Agricultural society had a whole season of flooding. It's called Perent, the coming forth. And I think some say Shamu, or the inundation. So a whole season where the land is flooded because the Nile was the economic bloodline of that country. So they had to move to higher ground, and they was totally okay with it. They were so okay with it that they integrated that natural phenomenon into the culture. They integrated that natural phenomenon into the theology. And here we have us. And now here we have us, the U.S., with our arrogance and our sophistication. We got so comfortable with our illusion of security. We got the paved streets and the buildings and the central air and the heating. And that hurricane came through and totally disrespected us. We was violated, didn't know what to do, right? So will we get smart and learn how to live in tune with those things? Will it then become to penetrate our culture? Because now they're saying that so-called effects of global warming is 20 years ahead of schedule. So we thought we had time to fix some things, like, nah, it's here now. So there's gonna have to be some very serious shifts, changes, and transformations going on. Now, secondly, the doctor said I should stick to teaching Ma'at. Said he's not an expert. This guy's not an expert. He should stick to teaching Ma'at. Isn't that an oxymoron? Let the experts deal with the medical stuff. You just stick to teaching Ma'at. When they say that, I could be offended because when it comes to spiritual stuff, they like for us to stay speaking about intangible things, like the heavens and the unseen ancestors. Like, those are the teachings of Ma'at. Are those the teachings of Ma'at? She said too. Why you say no?
Because there's more than that.
But it's true. It's just more. Right? Okay. So now, if I ask every person in this room, what is the definition of Ma'at? What's your first word you're going to use?
Law, order.
Balance.
All of y'all right? I fuck with it. Don't we say Ma'at is truth, justice, right? Like, I came with all these other. So I'm trying to set up the lesson and messing me up. I'm going to learn my lesson and asking y'all questions.
It's always true.
And y'all were also correct. It just wasn't the answer that I wanted. So he says, stick to teaching Ma'at. So stick to teaching the truth. Isn't that what we're doing? We're having a discussion of truth. We're all supposed to be seeking truth. We say Ma'at, everyone is seeking truth, even the doctor is seeking truth. But what we're finding out is people are seeking truths that appeal to their sensibilities. What you call truth is really what appeals to your sensibilities. So now here we are. If we had to use a word for God, what is our word?
That's it.
All right, I finally got it. I'm starting to get nervous up here. So we say netter. Netter is the etymological root to the word nature. So we're nature worshipers, we're nature venerators. Nature, according to the definition in the dictionary, is how the universe works. So our deity, our divine concept is nature. So anything natural appeals to our sensibility. Y'all feel where I'm going on this? Anything natural appeals to our sensibility because we're nature's people. We believe we're of the earth, we're of the cosmos. So we're going to always look to nature for our examples. So we'd be like, oh, you're constipated. You need to drink some water. Water is a natural element. Oh, you're still constipated. You need to breathe and drink some water. Air is natural. Oh, you're feeling dull and listless. You need to go outside and get some sun. Oh, natural. You see, that appeals to our sensibility. So when we're hearing about sickness, illness, so-called disease, which are really just symptoms of disorder, our sensibility is gonna make us turn to nature, right? We on the same page?
True.
Now, science is atheistic in its nature. Science doesn't have a healthy respect from nature. So for people that's not into religion and spirituality, they're gonna go towards the science. That appeals to their sensibility, right? We can't really determine who's right or wrong. You're just gonna go to where your sensibilities lie. And that's what's going to be your truth. So what we're seeing in this past 2 years, we're seeing that facts, you know, like facts over feelings, facts. We're seeing that facts could be manipulated to appear to be true. Something that was true last year is no longer true this year. You're like, yo, what is it? And they're telling us to give up our religion and our spirituality and follow science, and science can't make up his mind. Remember at the beginning, that, oh yeah, just exercise and stuff, you should be all right. Then, oh, exercise is not good enough. Wear a mask. And then he's like, oh, no, the mask don't do anything. Dr. Fauci, I'm quoting Dr. Fauci, oh no, the mask don't do anything. Then now they're at the point where we're 3 masks. You're like, damn, how are you going to not doing nothing to 3? Then, but they're failing to tell you that the N95 is the only qualified mask, so you just playing games with the other masks. The virus is enough to go through all of that. I saw a man demonstrate online, he had glasses. He had put on 3 masks, and he blew through all 3 masks, and then his glass still fogged up. Wow. Virus goes right through that. What are we doing? Wow. So facts could be manipulated to look like the truth. So what happens is we have a whole bunch of people that's in between the natural healing and in between the, what they call it, allopathic. They like to call us over here alternative medicine. In reality, this is the real medicine. Allopathic is the alternative medicine. They found another way to do something that's different from the natural, the organic way. They be flipping stuff on us and then try to make us defend our position. Like, yo, this has been here since the beginning of the time. This thing God done only been here several hundred years. So we have a whole bunch of people in between the natural healers and the allopathic healers. One person in our community, it was a woman, and she believed she had a prostrate gland. Amakato, where's your prostrate gland?
Prostate, that's what men got, right?
Yeah, okay. I'm like, she might actually. But anyway, she believed that. You know, I'm not clowning that person. And I said, where do you believe the prostate is? And she said, here, right? But this is not about that. The whole point is people go around their whole lives not knowing their whole bodies. So a person like that is going to submit to the jurisdiction of the doctor when some crisis in the world happens. They're like, I don't know. People don't even know where their liver is at. So when this spooky virus comes, you're like, hey, you just got to listen to the doctor. Get the vac. You see what I'm saying? That appeals to their sensibility because they don't know no better. But here, me and Mintu been studying like 30 years. You're like, what are y'all doing? I'm not bending the knee to them over there. And mind you, we're fair. They got some stuff we might have not figured out, and we got some stuff we know they ain't figured out, but they don't be humble enough to really give us a listen. So we have this polarizing thing, and it makes us feel like we got to double down on our stance. It makes them feel like they got to double down on their stance, and then everybody else is caught in between. Like, which one do we believe? When there can be a balance. Is those on the natural side are more open to balance than the ones on the other side. They're coming along, though, and that's why we got to look at what is the agenda. Because now doctors are now agreeing with the next that vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, hydrochloroquine, and what's that? Ivermectin. How do you say that? Ivermectin is effective home treatments for the so-called virus. That's just as good or maybe even better than the vaccination. Why aren't they telling us that?
Don't make no money.
Here we go. So here we got our people warring against each other, and somebody's making money off of it. When you could heal or cure or bring yourself back into balance with pennies on the dollar. I don't know about y'all, but I don't play with my spirituality. I don't play with my health. That's nobody else's responsibility but mine. As long as I'm in my right mind and I have my record and my resume of truth to live up to this point, I have no reason to doubt that. I have no reason to doubt nature. I have no reason to doubt my connection with nature. Too many people are playing around with their health and their spirituality. Like just 2 years ago, I was in a hospital life and death situation. It was my belief and my confidence in my spirituality and my knowledge of health that pulled me through. I give props to modern science, it saved me. It got me out there. It got me out the bind because could have been in a coma, could have not made it. So the machine saved me. I had to get, what do they call it? Dialysis. Dialysis for 4 hours a day, 4 hours, 3 times a week in the hospital for 3 weeks. My legs were swollen up, I couldn't walk. I couldn't even feel my body. I grew new respect for the body. Now I know how ancestor spirits feel. I felt like I was outside of my body. I'm here in this hospital bed, and the hospital bed is feeling like quicksand. Because I'm trying to just do stuff like sit up. I couldn't, it was just dead. Now imagine how spirits feel. You trying, oh, spirits help me, such and such. They don't got nobody to correspond or cooperate with them. And I got my own body, and I'm still here on earth, and my body ain't doing what it is I needed to do. But yet I'm present. I'm just like, man, I kept saying I will not be defeated. My legs were just hurting all the time. The painkillers they gave me wasn't working. Pain 100% of the time. I will not be defeated. That was my mantra. So I give props to science. It got me out, but it was limitations. They were scared to have conversations with me about the mind and the psyche and the connection to the body. They was dismissing it. I'm getting upset with them. Then I had to realize that's just not their pedigree. Why I was bothered is because they were Indian doctors. And I know Indians into Hinduism, and so I know they know their culture. So I'm trying to have a real conversation. But their initiation into the system got them turning on what we all know to be true from our culture. You're like, oh yeah, my grandfather believes that stuff. So now they're proud of their son because he got one of the highest titles in the country, which is doctor, which they believe gives them the right to turn their back on centuries of tradition that's technically been working. So not to disparage that, it worked, it brought me out. But if I left it up to them, I would still be on dialysis now. So when I got out, it went from 4 hours 3 times a week to 3 hours 3 times a week. Imagine planning your life around that. You're like, oh, let's do the retreat. Oh, I can't because I got to get dialysis. And so I'm going to probably make it up to the retreat Sunday, y'all. Y'all be like, oh man, this can't come. Can't go on vacation, can't do nothing because everything is about this machine. And once again, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. Y'all hear me acknowledging that, right? I'm not sounding like I'm downplaying that. Because the brother says, stick to the teachings of I'm trying to be fair. So I had to respect that they were limited in their thinking. Then someone gave me the number of a naturopathic doctor. We have the allopathic over here. They're like, yeah, you're lucky you survived. We don't know if your kidney's ever gonna work again. You're gonna have to do dialysis indefinitely. And mind you, when I got out, I found out you can't do dialysis indefinitely. Eventually your kidney's gonna fail, so you need to get a kidney donor. And they said the list of that was 7 years. So, so the depression is kicking in. I'm just like, nah, man, 7 years, no. So someone gives me the number of a doctor called Dr. Hill, which I found out is Lauren Hill's father from out here in East Orange. I spoke to him on the phone. Like, I know my stuff, Mintu knows the stuff, we be dropping stuff on him, so he was taking it to whole other levels. Just on the phone with him for an hour, I'm just like, man, chill, I need time to think about what you say. He was just blowing my mind. Stuff I ain't never heard before. Then he had the scientific evidence that the allopathic would respect to break down with the support what it was that he was teaching. What he told me was this, he said, total confidence. He said, I could get your kidneys up and running in 3 weeks. So imagine that I'm asking these doctors, what about mind-body connection? That don't really work. We just gotta see. That's discouraging for somebody like me to believe what it is that I believe. Then this guy said, I can get this run up in 3 weeks. Total confidence. And I'm like, 3 weeks? I had to check myself because I'm thinking I'm being positive, yet I'm doubting. So I found somebody telling me something I wanted to hear, needed to hear, and now I'm doubting. So you gotta watch the mind and how it works and how it vacillates. So I had to weigh it out. Be like, okay, continue doing dialysis and possibly get on this waiting list, or take a chance with the doctor, at most it won't work. That was a no-brainer. And he didn't, and mind you, his service didn't cost me no more than $250. That hospital bill was $14,000. That dialysis bill was $32,000. So 3 weeks and $250. He ain't had me get a whole list of herbs or nothing. He just had me do certain shifts, changes in my diet. And guess what? On that third week, I was at dialysis. They like, Mr. Holmes, this is gonna be your last day here. I was like, oh.
Wow.
So coming from the doors of death to this, and then you talk about this little virus and I need to get a shot. I ain't built like that. I'm like, nah, I believe in what it is that I believe. I don't play. I know what's real and what's not. Sometimes you can think people like this is reckless. You look at people like 50 Cent until he got shot up, and after you go to them doors, you don't be playing no more with this thing. You like, bring it. Watch this. They say that 90% of all disease is psychological.
Yes.
It used to be 80%. Our research is 90% of all diseases are now considered from stress and anxiety. 90% of all accidents you get on the job is because a person failed to deal with stress. 90% of all the reasons a person goes to their primary doctor is stress and anxiety related. So everything the doctor is treating you for, obesity, high blood pressure, hypertension, those are called comorbidities. Y'all know that word from what? It's relation to COVID, right? They say these are comorbidities to COVID. So what are we saying? 90% of it is based off of stress and anxiety. 90% of what the doctors are treating you, obesity, high blood pressure, hypertension, is from stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety is not tangible. Stress and anxiety is your reactions to life. I don't know if y'all know that was a bomb. 95%, 1.3% of the populations, all their diseases is coming from anxiety and stress. We don't even have 1% of the population that's got COVID yet. So what's that saying? Is a good percentage of the people that got COVID is got it because of stress and anxiety related to it. So every time you hear about the deaths on the TV, that's a stress response. Every time you hear about the vaccine mandates, that's a stress response. Hearing about possibly losing your job, that's a stress response. Hearing about breakthrough infections after you got vaccinated, that's a stress response. And everything you hear and know about this disease is invoking stress. So it's almost, what do they call that? Predictive programming. That you're inevitably going to get it because they've been stressing you about it.
Yes.
So 90% of all diseases is in the mind. Now, what do we teach as Kemmunites and spiritualists? Give me one thing that you could do in your everyday life that's free, that could reduce stress.
Meditation.
Meditation, what else?
Yoga.
Yoga, what else? Exercise. Breathing exercises, so we got breathing exercises, yoga, meditation, going outside. All of this stuff is free. Pennies on the dollar if you got to take a class. So the question is, if 90% of the stuff is in our mind, and it's that thing that's in our mind makes us even susceptible to just about all diseases, why aren't they mandating exercising? Why aren't they mandating meditation, since we know these things are scientifically to improve? Remember, they go with the science. Science said these things reduce stress. Why aren't we doing HESI? Why aren't we doing mantra? Why aren't we doing, in English, positive affirmation? So us in our spiritual community, we believe 1 ounce of prevention is more than a pound of cure. So they think they're doing prevention with the jab. We say we're doing the prevention before the prevention. So we're just trying to walk this thin line. We're trying to find balance, since the brother said, got to follow the teachings of my eye. So we agree with the doctors about the vitamin D, the vitamin C, the zinc, the hydrochloroquine, and the ivermectin. Those are natural things that you can do. What I learned from Dr. Africa is treat yourself like you got the disease to prevent yourself from getting the disease. I heard him say that here at this building 30 years ago. He said, I treat myself like I got prostate in order not to get prostate. So what is that disease? or it affects your lungs. So you should be doing things every day to improve your lung function. So if that were to happen to you, you already got reinforced lung function, and you will probably most likely come back into balance more faster than someone who doesn't know that, who doesn't do it. So all that to say is that we listen to both sides. There's pros and cons to both. All I was saying was, you can't just listen to one side of the story, because if you listen to one side of the story, they just said, just get the jab. You gotta stop being so selfish. You gotta stop being selfish. You gotta think of the greater good. And remember, these thoughts that I'm saying, and they're not my thoughts, this is what my intuition tells me, but I found the research to back it up. It is other doctors that's initiated in that same school of thought that's decided to follow the oath that they took, which is the first do no harm, what they call the Hippocratic oath. The first do no harm. So some of these doctors got a conscience. Y'all don't remember at the beginning of this pandemic, there was 300 doctors right out there in the front of the White House. Y'all remember that? It was led by African doctor Stella Damascus. Everybody's forgotten about this, and now this conspiracy thing. So the news ain't covering the other side of the equation. So there's already hundreds of doctors that's not for this. But they're telling you, listen to the doctors. You're like, we all listen to the doctors. So one side, stop being selfish, do the greater good. And the other side, who are also doctors, saying, these things could happen. Some short-term things and some long-term things that could happen. So right now, you can be like, okay, I can do the right thing and do the greater good, but these other doctors, your brothers, your peers, are saying, I might die within 2 to 5 years. So what's the good of doing the right thing if I could die in 2 to 5 years? So this is not a judgment about anybody who got the vaccine. Do what it is that you feel that is right, but we can't persecute those who got it right to have vaccine hesitancy. So there's a doctor called Christina Parks. She has a PhD, African American, since we needed somebody to represent our community. If my words wasn't good enough, look her up and she'll say everything that I'm saying in that scientific jargon, because she's initiated in that system. She speaks that language, and she's proven that African Americans have full right to be hesitant. So I'm not out my lane, because I'm giving you research to counter research that's out there. Was that fair? No, that wasn't even supposed to be the lesson. We just had to clarify it. So briefly, I want to deal with the Saturn-Jupiter thing again. Remember, Saturn and Jupiter, we represent contraction and expansion, right? So our community is experiencing contraction, because we're guilty by association with a bunch of foolishness that's going on in our community now. 3 prominent figures in our conscious community are now under heavy scrutiny. These individuals have built their whole platform off the idea of the black woman is God, which the world now believes is a Kemetic teaching, exclusive Kemetic teaching. So these individuals said the black woman is God. Now these same individuals are now allegedly under investigation for physically abusing women, black women, allegedly sexually abusing minors. And now there's no more teaching going on in the conscious community. Now it's mudslinging. And mind you, these figures that I'm talking about, none of them are initiated into the Kemetic tradition. And this is the problem. None of these individuals that built their platform on Kemetic teachings, none of them were initiated in this community. And I'm gonna put it out there, and I don't care who it offends. The Kemetic community, the real Kemetic community, are students of Baba Hidaru, Mfidisi, and Shechem or Shechem. That is the real Kemetic spiritual community. Anybody else out there ain't Kemetic. We have our brothers and sisters in the scholastic and intellectual sector, and they have a deep appreciation for the Kemetic community, but they're not Kemetic because they don't practice any of the tradition. So no disrespect for them, but that's what it is. And then we got our other side on the metaphysics side. You got the Phil Valentines and all of them teach from a Kemetic base, but they don't practice the traditions either. So them individuals that I said that's now in trouble. They mix in some of the intellectualism from the scholars and some of the metaphysics from that, and they got their own hodgepodge. So what we find out, because these are young brothers, they're not even sisters, young brothers, what we're finding out is if you're not initiated and you ain't came up in a community with structure and infrastructure, we're seeing the folly of youth. A folly of youth with no counsel, with no elders. So now when we're watching these individuals looking like we're watching the lifestyles of the hip-hop rich and famous, no teachings going on no more. Now it's looking like, oh, look what I got. Oh, y'all just hating on me. Look at this new car. So you're like, oh, so that's where all the donations is going. Like, yo, what happened to the building of the community going on? So why am I dealing with these? These people are not part of our community, but this is a black eye to the conscious movement. This is a black eye to so-called wokeism because the Kemetic tradition was the face of the conscious community. It was the symbol for being woke. Everybody got Ankh tattoos, I Farouk tattoos, Ma'at this. They even created negative terminology of Hotep. Ends. So the conscious community has a black eye due to association with Kemetic teaching. So now we're forced to contract. You can't build now. Everybody's looking at all of us with a side eye because they thought we endorsed these individuals. They be like, you knew they was crazy, why didn't you stop them? Because they wasn't part of our community, it wasn't part of our structure. If they were part of the structure, we have to sit them down. So now we're looked at like we support that and we might do something like that. And that's when that's why I don't deal with religion, that's why, all that stuff. So now we're about to go several steps back as a community. And everyone held Kemet up on this esteem over, what does that sign say? Was that Asiatic, Muslim, Hebrew, Israelite, more? Everybody was getting away from that and kind of coming under a Kemetic-like umbrella, and now this happened. So all I'm saying is, right now we're closing our doors to the community. So right now, we'll be doing our first eye on Kemet for a while, not forever, just because of the thing that's going on in the world. I'm tired of it personally. We're closing our doors to all of you out there that consider us family and was like, I'm gonna get down here, I'm gonna get with y'all, I wanna be a part of it. Now's the time, because after this cycle, we shutting it down for a minute. How many cycles we brought through this year so far, Hemet?
We initiated 2 plans this year and we'll initiate our 3rd before the end of this year.
So we brought through 2 clans this year. We're about to do our 3rd before the end of the year. So we're doing one last one. The proselytizing is over. There's nothing else to learn. If you don't want to do this, you ain't got to do this. You did not come here to learn how to defend the Kemetic legacy against white folk. Some people believe that's what this is about. Let me get all this knowledge because we got to show these white folks that Africans was the first. That was part of the talk at the beginning. No, you came here to get your thing together. And in getting your thing together, you're going to help some folks while you do it. But it wasn't here to debate white folks to prove to them that this is ours. You did not come here to debate your cousins on the scholar side and your cousins on the metaphysical side. We didn't come to debate them and to try to clarify our authenticity. We got caught up into that. We got accused on both sides that we ain't real, so we're not doing that no more. We're not going to debate with people about nationality. So now you got people who don't want to be black no more. People don't want to be considered African no more. We got all these new exotic names for our nationality. We ain't doing that no more. We Kemetic. This is what we doing. So all those people that's doing that other thing, peace be upon you. I hope that work out for you, but we doing this. Oh, you ain't black, you ain't African, cool. I hope that work out, we doing this. Oh, you think we fake and phony and we playing dress up? Okay, I hope that thing work out for you. We doing, y'all see where we going with this? Our beliefs and our practices are no longer up for questioning. So what we're learning through this last several years is the culture has changed. So we can't be having talks about buying buildings and lands because everybody's trying to do everything online now. It's a struggle to get people to show up at a building or at a function now because everybody's so comfortable with the Zoom. But what we need to learn from Elijah Muhammad and Marcus Garvey before them, so they had excellent organization, but they didn't have infrastructure. So they did powerful things. They had businesses, but the infrastructure was relationships and interrelationships. That is the glue to all those things. So that's why we're stepping back, and we got a good cycle of people that we have in our community, and we're going to work with our good people, because the lesson of infrastructure, the lesson of relationships and interrelationships is this. You're going to learn some things about yourself, because we all reflections of one another. You're going to get affirmed and confirm some positive things, and you're going to get confirmed some very unpositive things about yourself too, and we just got to deal with it. Through the lesson of that, you're going to have, we are learning to endure disappointment as well as moral failure. So disappointment and moral failure is not an excuse to quit. Y'all hear that? That's what happened in the past before. People, oh, Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey wasn't perfect, so I'm quitting. So that stunts the growth, because why would you expect somebody to be perfect anyway? Is that possible? So our remedy for this is, well, in our tradition, we do readings. We do several readings in a year. And here's a lesson for all of you about reading. Because as a community, there's been a lot of information out there, and we become a smart people, but sometimes we so smart that we're stupid. So we put ourselves in a position where we like, well, I disagree with God. I disagree with the divine. So I'm saying, as a spiritualist, you could disagree, but you don't have the right to disobey. Because if you're really spiritual as you say you are, you'll go through the process and you'll be like, oh, that's why that was. Remember, the divine is not caught up in our structures of time and space. So here we are, we come into the divine, and our ancestors demanding answers that we're not capable of receiving at the time, because we're caught up in our limited perceptions on how we think things go. So if you're as righteous as you say you are, then the bad that you experience ain't really bad. Remember they said that saying, once you make up your mind, the universe conspires. How does it? The universe conspires to help you. Once you get on code, right? The universe conspires. So the divine intelligence conspires to help you. God conspires to help you. Neto, the deity, Amen Ra, Heru, all that conspires to help you when you are on code. So we get confused. They're like, well, I'm doing everything. I follow the reason. How come everything ain't good in my life? It's all good. If you're as good as you say you are, then that bad is not really bad. That bad, so-called bad, is a lesson. It's teaching you some things that you need to qualify for what it is that you're seeking. Because everybody's talking about success, abundance, and prosperity. If you're about success, abundance, and prosperity, and you can't handle disappointment or moral failure, then you out the game. You ain't ready for it. Because that's all success is, when you mastered failure. Anyway. Y'all want some insight on the reading? Reading of the year. Clarity for this cycle. Because remember, we did the Q1 the first quarter of the year. We didn't bring out another quarter. So I'm going to give y'all some stuff about what we got to look forward to. Remember at the beginning of middle of last year, it said Heru was the deity. It said this year you're going to face some challenges. They said you won the battle, but it's time. There's a greater war on the horizon. I remember we was like, well, what war could be greater than now? Everything that you believe is now being challenged. Your belief about economics is being challenged. Your belief about job security is being challenged. Your belief about health, or who's qualified to help you in your health, everything is being challenged. So here we go. The reading. It was revealed that Ned Heru, the deity Heru, was the primary governing Neteru of the year. In this current cycle, the reading was doubly confirmed and affirmed by Ned Ra. Heru and Ra is just two aspects of light. Heru is earthly light, Ra is cosmic light. Check. So Heru is earthly light, Ra is cosmic light. Heru represents the personification of the enlightened being on earth. So Ra is your connection to the divine light. Y'all got it? Because sometimes we say these deities, and we don't understand the context of how how it's being taught. Ned Raj revealing he is governing this quarter. The presence of the Ned, Ra, and Heru affirms and reinforces the need, watch this, the need and the necessity of the sacred masculine. All this talk about the divine feminine for the past 5 years, so it's like, no. Or we can say it's time to balance that dialogue. It ain't about picking one over the other. These things cycle. Everybody having this conversation about, oh, it's really the matriarchy before the patriarchy. Then you do some more research and you find out it was the patriarchy before, and they be like, oh, I got some more research. Everybody's trying to one-up each other on which is better, the matriarchy or the patriarchy, when you see that there's cycles. They were happening simultaneously. Don't we know that now, up and down and now they had all these different temples, right? While they could have been doing matriarchy down south, while up north they was doing patriarchy. It wasn't about which one was doing it first. So down south, for the situation and circumstances they needed the divine feminine. For the situation up north, they needed divine masculine. Some needed both. That's why we say the Yit Mutnet here, the father mother created, the mother father could sound like a creator. Where was I? The sacred masculine. This is not referring to the worship of men. A lot of times we get that confused. When you hear femininity, you think it's got to be talking about women or the black woman. Sacred masculinity got to be, it's connected, but not always in that sense that you're talking about. Remember, there's always layers to theology. This is not referring to the worship of men, but more so what are the principles of sacred masculinity, whose qualities are strength, authority, steadiness, integrity, and law. Law is actually connected to the divine feminine, because is it Ma'at, the personification of law?
Yes.
The principles of masculinity, or the qualities, are strength, authority, steadiness, integrity, and law. As men and women are asked to take mental inventory to where we are at currently. Men and women are asked to take mental inventory to where we're at currently, personally as well as collectively. So we got to take inventory of ourselves. So you are related to the whole. You are related to our community, and the community is related to the planet. When we say Saruj Ta, what does that mean? Saruj? Restore, or to heal. Ta, land or world. So Saruj Ta really means to heal the world. Let us be reminded that even though this Tepra addresses some things in the theme of the world, it is still primarily addressing committee initiates practitioners and how to make the necessary required shifts, changes, and transformations that will assure peace and empowerment in their lives. So we're doing the reading of the year, but this reading is not necessary. The further you get away from this circle, the less and less it connects with you. Like when I'm doing a reading, I'm doing it for us in this room, right? Like it's harder to reach your mother at home that don't believe in it. They're like, Mom, the sis said these things about to happen in the world. That's not going to connect with them. It's still primarily talking to the family first. Ra informs us that we can afford to be better personal examples of what our tradition teaches. Y'all heard that. We can afford to be better examples of what our teachings teach. So we were just contrasting that with those several people that's now being indicted in our community, all types of heinous acts, because they was not grounded in the tradition. So our reading is saying we could afford to have better examples, better personal examples of what it is that you believe. How Kemetic are you? When I look at you, can I tell that you're Kemetic? When I listen to you, can I tell that you're Kemetic? When I go to your home, does it look like I'm in the house of a Kemetic person? When I look at your friends and your associates, do I know what you're about? Because everything, your home is a reflection of who you are. Who you associate is a reflection of who you are. Everything is a reflection. Okay. Ra's image is Aten. What is Aten?
Sun, actual sun.
The actual sun. Ra's image is Aten, and the sun shines for all to see. However, we are being required to reevaluate how we are standing out, quote unquote, standing out like the Aten. The Kemetic tradition does not support the notion that all attention is good attention. The Kemetic tradition is quite clear on its expectation of public persona as well as ethnic image. What does that mean? In the ancient world, Kemet was so on top of his game that Greeks wanted to be Kemetic. Everybody wanted to be Kemetic. They was crossing the burning sands to get there to be part of that culture, to look like them. That's why when you study the ancient culture, you go back and study Hebrew culture, the oldest Hebrew artifact is a seal, and on that seal is the sun disk with the wings on it, from this called the seal of Hezekiah. So the thing that validates the Judean culture is a Kemetic symbol. Everybody had some type of influence by the Kemetic tradition. Now we lost our power. We up here trying to look like everybody else. And finding excuses not to stand, but they said standing on your square is Masonic, but stand in our circle, on point in the circle. That's Ra with that point in the center. For thousands of years, the world as we know it, we're trying their best to follow Kemetic codes of conduct as well as the cultural image. It appears that we have gotten a little off track. We are being reminded that we should filter and interpret life through our own cultural lens and not by default subscribe to the foreign, although be it sometimes interesting philosophies. Did you understand that? Stick to our paradigm, our worldview, even though we got a lot of interesting philosophies out there, that's cool, but what does your ancestors say? What does our ancestors say? If you can't find it in Kemmunion, let's look at our West African tradition. What is our view? How are we supposed to view this? How are we supposed to view relationships? How is it we're supposed to review food? How is it we supposed to view breathing, health? We got to come from our perspective. The principles of masculinity teaches us these three things. Number one, to be unapologetic and empowered with our cultural identity and image. Do I need to repeat? To being unapologetic and empowered with our cultural identity and image. Is my Kundalini raising or did it get hot in here? Huh? That might be me. I'm gonna be sweating. We almost finished up. All right, 2, be honest about our strengths and our weaknesses and doing our best to seek education and training to improve upon them. That spoke volumes. So everybody in this time, we're increasing our knowledge, but look what it says. Be honest about our strengths and our weaknesses and doing our best to seek education and training to improve upon them. So you can't be like, yeah, I know I'll be doing that. They're like, okay, but what are you doing to get past that? We have very high standards, and a lot of times we fail our standards, but we need to demonstrate that we are trying to improve, that we know how to improve, right? So we just ain't just trusting people for no reason. Be like, oh, I see your effort. You're like, oh, I'm getting counseling. Oh, I'm getting healing. Or whatever. 3, seeing goals, projects, charges, and reading. Seeing goals, projects, charges, and readings through, even when you don't feel inspired. Or no matter what else, or whatever, no matter what other responsibilities you may have. Seeing goals, projects, charges, and readings through, even though you don't feel inspired, no matter what other responsibility. So we pretty much got to hold to the course and stop having excuses why you ain't did what it is that you were supposed to do. Simple. There's a ritual, but that's going to be for the initiates. There got to be some perks to being Kemetic. You can't just give everything away. And that's fair enough, since these Negroes out here talking about all the answers are within. You're like, all right, we'll see what you can figure it out then. But we're going to have whole court within our circle about what we're going to do. The lesson for this cycle is governed by the nature Jehuti. Who is Jehuti? Articulate thought, word, and speech, wisdom, which is another manifestation of the divine masculine. In support of the charge of Neb Ra on getting on code, Jehuti informs us that Our mental posture needs to be adjusted. Even though the country and the world is trying to come up out of quarantine consciousness, Jehuti says it is not our time to throw all caution to the wind. Jehuti charges us to be introspective, not consumed with public activities. This indicates that perhaps many did not take advantage of the quarantine downtime as they should have. Many failed to operate with direction during that cycle. Did you fulfill all the requirements from the first reading? Some of y'all like, what reading? Oh, that speaks volume. What reading? The charge is also, check it out, remember we said it was a challenge. Remember we talked about contraction and expansion. It says, the charge is also for committee, groups, temples, and shrines to work on order within their own prospective organization, meaning in-house training. Neb Jehuti's charge will always be one of living in truth and wisdom. Neb Jehuti is in support of the message and the charge of Neb Ra, which is getting on code. So all our conversations be like, all right, what's the code? The code is the reading. So all our conversations need to be is sticking to this reading. That's all we need to know. If we stick to doing the reading and the requirements of the reading, we good. We don't gotta know everything. We just gotta know these things. Doesn't that make it simpler? To just not have to think you gotta know everything, just certain things. Neb Jehuti also, Neb Jehuti is also about right consciousness. In order to do that, the neurons in your brain have to be fired, fully charged and prepared to receive divine revelation or unvelation. All right, some good news. Y'all want to hear the good news? Like, we always been told all this stuff. We always getting in trouble. We ain't meditating enough, ain't praying enough. But remember, this is my pet peeve with the ATR, the African tradition. Sometimes we get so caught up into wanting 1,001 recipes just to live life. Like if you are that righteous being that you claim, your life works out. We got to get away from just doing a whole bunch of stuff to being. So how many times do you need to be told you need to meditate? Like, ain't that been for the last, since I've been doing readings, you still got to be told? They still yelling at us that you're not meditating enough, you're not breathing enough, you're not praying enough, you're not showing enough gratitude, but you're supposed to be righteous. You confused why life ain't going your way, but yet the deities that you've been raised telling you you're not being authentic enough. According to the reading, it says we are informed that we should rejoice because the necessary shifts, changes, and transformations are not that mountainous that is not that mountainous that it is likely to go well for us in this cycle. Meaning it ain't that serious. So if you really going it the way you're supposed to, you're going to have some good things come through. The Nebet or Set governs this. In alignment with the message of Neb Ra and Jehuti or Set informs us if we perform our devotions with loving and open heart rather than desperation or even religious obligation, and that our processes and our outcomes doesn't have to be so painstakingly and perilous. So it's about true devotion, not because Nasut said, the reading said, it's because you want to do, you want to get right. Usually that's a whole difference in your energy and your approach to your practice that you want to do it. Authentic spirituality, one's practice should be invigorating. So when you finish praying and doing your libation, you should be feeling like, yo, I'm ready for the world. I'm indestructible. Not, let me do this. I only got 15 minutes. I was supposed to do yoga for a half hour. It should be invigorating, affirming, and confirming. The charge of Orset is one of self-care. Nourish and renew your mind and spirit as the outer reflects the inner. If you can authentically tap and refresh your spirit, then by cosmic default, all physical relationships will have to reflect that same principle. Y'all heard that? If the outer reflects the inner, and you authentically tap and refresh your spirit, then by default, the physical relationships will have to reflect that. But once again, if you're righteous as in tune as you say you are, you're going to be good. It's all energy. Everything is interdependent. When you authentically shift, then so will everyone and everything else. So if you get your thing together, you're going to inspire those around you to get their thing together. You ain't got to preach at them. You ain't got to preach to them. You're going to be the example. They'll be like, man, you get this thing together. I need to get my thing together because I'm starting to feel silly sitting next to this person that's so busy, that's on their code, on their purpose. In conclusion, there's still some more, but in conclusion for today, this TEPROT informs us about what we ultimately need to do is to prepare for success. It's indicating unexpected benefits, windfalls, and wins. It's indicating that those who really put in the work were actively following the guidance from the former cycle. And that you're about to see the fruits of your labor. And for those who are not receiving the fruits of their labor, then they should contemplate parts of this reading referring to self-delusion and inauthenticity or lack of self-awareness or accountability to bring home the well-deserved and long-awaited wins, successes, and abundance. So check yourself. Check the quality of your spiritual practice. So I'm going to leave it on that note. I think we covered a lot today, so we'll continue going over it the next communion. So thank everybody for their attention. Can we rise and stand and close out? Left foot forward, hands in the calm position. And we all say we go into peace and satisfaction. Shimmy Matep. Brothers right over left, sisters left over right. Dianu, Uncle Jocelyn.
Dianu, Uncle Jocelyn.
Open up, give energy around the room. Slide, retract your foot, slide it into the heart. Ground it. Count up 3, ground it with your right foot. Wise to news,
Thank you to those of you who have joined us today on Facebook and YouTube Live. We will be back here on Sunday, October 3rd to celebrate Hanek Ma'at. And we will be again streaming on Facebook and YouTube Live. We appreciate the energy that you send to us in reciprocity for our efforts and to continue our work. You can send donations via PayPal at templeofanu@gmail.com, or you can use Cash App, which is $Temple of Anu. We also thank those of you who are here in the room in person for all of your donations and reciprocity shown in your energy and presence. Shamim Matap, everyone. Till next time.